4 a.m. on October 15th, 2025. Music: 20 Iranian Shahed 136 drones operating without IFF codes and showing no response to control signals moved directly toward the U.S. command center in Hakka, Syria. They came in a dense formation, relying on sheer numbers and assuming their systems could slip through even the most advanced defensive network. Within minutes, they were about to understand a completely new reality of modern air defense. The question was simple yet critical: which defensive layer would engage them first? This was not a random incident. It was a calculated move, designed as part of a broader strategy to challenge the U.S. position in Hakka, a key location controlling access to a crucial land route toward the Mediterranean. Beyond causing damage, the operation also appeared intended to test response patterns. However, the decision came at an extremely high cost, measured in millions. Inside the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere was cold and focused, broken only by the steady sound of processing systems. There was no delay in detection. Passive early warning systems immediately picked up unusual activity. A unique signal pattern was identified, analyzed, and matched against stored intelligence data within seconds. The conclusion was clear: Shad 136. Right away, the command and control system elevated the alert status. Radar tracking indicated approximately 20 drones executing a coordinated pincer-style approach from the northeast. They were spreading out across multiple vectors, flying at very low altitude and using terrain and weather conditions to reduce visibility. Moving at around 185 kilometers per hour, each unit carried roughly 40 kilograms of explosives, with fixed-wing triangular designs and GPS navigation systems guiding their path. Their goal was to inflict maximum impact before any defensive response could fully activate. Meanwhile, in Thairan, inside a concealed command facility of the Quds Force, operators monitored the mission through satellite links. Reports suggested stable control signals and confidence in the operation's progress. What they could not see was that, every second, the U.S. side was assembling a fully integrated intelligence picture in real time. The Shahed 136 formation was entering a layered defense environment, built to transform incoming threats into critical miscalculations. A coordinated sequence of countermeasures was already being prepared. Far above, the KH-11 reconnaissance satellite in low orbit locked onto faint thermal signatures from the piston engines. Signals intelligence systems detected the specific radio frequency patterns. Live satellite imagery was combined through tactical data links into a unified operational display. This fusion of multiple intelligence sources, a core element of network-centric warfare doctrine, delivered near-complete situational awareness. Every defensive unit observed the same targets on the same map simultaneously. No explosions yet, no visible trails in the sky, only the silent intensity of electronic warfare in action. The first defensive layer, the outer perimeter, was activated. High-powered jamming systems released a strong electromagnetic field across a wide frequency range, from 1 to 18 gigahertz, sweeping through the drone formation. The primary focus was disrupting communication links, especially satellite navigation channels such as GPS and GLONASS. Inside the Iranian control center, the remote monitoring screens suddenly began to distort. The green flight path indicators started to stutter, then collapsed into red system faults across the screens. One after another, operators reported that both communication links and satellite navigation had gone dark. The early confidence inside the Iranian command structure began to fall apart. Confusion turned into disbelief, and disbelief quickly shifted into rising pressure as their carefully planned strike was being dismantled by an unseen defensive layer. Their operation was breaking down before an opponent they could not visually identify. Within moments, 8 of the 20 UAVs lost orientation completely. With no reference data available, they were effectively blind in open air. Some drifted off course, entering unstable loops before impacting the ground. Others triggered built-in failsafe behavior, initiating self-destruction in mid-flight. It was a methodical reduction of the incoming swarm without a single shot being fired. Yet this was also the point where the situation became more complex. The remaining 12 drones managed to transition into inertial navigation mode, continuing forward without external signals. They pushed through the disrupted zone of electronic interference and cleared the first defensive layer. It was a partial breakthrough, enough to keep hope alive for the operators watching from the control center. At that stage, everything depended on maintaining momentum and numerical advantage. The command system confirmed 12 active tracks that had survived the electronic suppression zone. Immediately, engagement authority shifted to NTWQ-1 Avenger mobile air defense units. These systems were not just missile platforms, they were mobile interception units designed specifically to protect critical assets and maneuvering forces from low-altitude aerial threats. Each vehicle was already integrated into the wider sensor network, receiving targeting data long before visual contact was possible. Positioned around the perimeter in coordinated coverage zones, they formed a tightly connected defensive ring. The Avenger units began slewing their weapon systems into position. Target assignments flowed through Link 16, distributing tracking data across all platforms in real time. Ready to fire on command. The order came through the internal network with absolute clarity. Inside one of the Avenger vehicles, the gunner watched a thermal display lock onto a bright signature moving across the screen, an incoming Shahed drone. 3, 2, 1, engage. A coordinated volley erupted from multiple positions, cutting across the night sky in intersecting trajectories. The system combined rapid-fire cannons with Stinger missile capabilities designed to engage low-altitude targets with high precision. The missiles, guided by infrared tracking and resistant to countermeasures, accelerated toward their designated targets as the network confirmed simultaneous engagements. 6 drones were eliminated in quick succession, their fragments falling harmlessly into the desert below. It was a sharp and controlled response to the few UAVs that had broken through the electronic disruption layer. Even under heavy pressure, the remaining drones continued adapting. They expanded their spacing and shifted into irregular flight patterns, attempting to complicate tracking solutions and force constant retargeting across the defensive network. Smoke and debris from the previous detonations began to reduce visibility, making it harder for the gunner to maintain optical tracking. The system increasingly depended on radar, which continued to cut through the obscured airspace with steady precision. The engagement was proceeding as expected, but the pressure of time was steadily rising. Then, at exactly 4:25 a.m., the last 6 UAVs executed a coordinated change in tactics. They dropped suddenly below 30 meters and split apart into unpredictable zigzag routes, attempting to exploit terrain masking and create confusion in the tracking network. 6 remaining radar signatures slipped past the second defensive layer and entered the inner engagement zone within a 1.5-kilometer radius. This was the domain of directed energy systems, DUs, high-power laser platforms rated around 50 kilowatts. A different class of defense altogether. No sound, no flash, no visible projectile, only a concentrated beam of energy traveling at light speed, designed for precision interception against low-cost aerial threats. The system activated instantly. A narrow red beam, barely visible through the haze, locked onto the first target. Energy concentrated on a single point along the drone's wing structure. In a fraction of a second, temperatures surged beyond 1,000 degrees Celsius. The material structure failed instantly. Metal and composite layers weakened, melted, and vaporized. The aircraft lost stability, spun briefly in the air, and then fell toward the ground. The beam shifted immediately to the next target. The second drone's electronics bay was struck directly, disabling core systems as internal components fused and failed. The third was hit at the rear section, destroying propulsion and forcing an immediate loss of thrust. All of it unfolded in near real time, calculated and executed within the system's targeting logic. Environmental conditions began to play a role. The dense fog reduced beam efficiency by roughly 20%, slightly degrading performance. One drone, flying extremely low and using terrain contours for cover, managed to slip beyond the optimal engagement envelope. For a few seconds, a single red point remained on the radar, still moving forward. Silence returned to the command center as operators tracked its final approach. It had passed through the previous defensive layers, but its margin was gone. The final defensive layer engaged. The close-in weapon system, CIWS, also known as CRAM, came online. The 20mm Vulcan cannon rotated up to full speed almost instantly. Its dedicated Doppler radar locked onto the incoming target with extremely fast reaction time, calculating the intercept solution in microseconds. A sharp, tearing burst of gunfire cut through the air. CRAM unleashed a wall of 20mm rounds at a rate of roughly 4,500 rounds per minute, forming a dense defensive stream in the drone's path. The rounds did not need to explode. Their kinetic force alone was enough. The incoming UAV disintegrated midair as its structure shattered into fragments of metal and composite material. The last element of the attacking wave was fully neutralized, but the engagement was still not over. In the middle of the confusion, one additional drone, already disrupted by electronic interference from the beginning, drifted off its intended route for several minutes. It suddenly reappeared from the northeast, descending on a 50-degree vector before striking a storage structure on the perimeter of the base that held non-critical supplies. At that moment, most automated systems, from Avenger to CRAM, had already concentrated their tracking on the primary threats. For a brief instant, the engagement space was no longer shaped only by machines, but by human reaction and training. A member of the rapid response team, equipped with a handheld counter-drone system known as a tactical drone neutralization device, responded immediately. This specialized tool does not rely on kinetic impact. Instead, it emits directed radio frequency interference designed to disrupt control links and satellite navigation signals within a range of several hundred meters. The drone, already unstable from earlier signal disruption, began to drift in irregular patterns, making conventional interception increasingly difficult. But precision in this moment did not depend on firepower. The operator maintained steady tracking through the optical sight, aligned the system, and activated the device. A focused RF disruption field enveloped the UAV. Its remaining guidance links failed, onboard stabilization collapsed, and control surfaces locked. With no ability to correct its flight, it lost lift and dropped out of the air, landing in an open area away from critical infrastructure. At 4:35 a.m., while debris from the engagement was still cooling, the second phase of the operation began. Intelligence teams reviewed full telemetry from all 20 UAVs, reconstructing their movement paths from initial detection to final impact. Cross-referencing satellite imagery, signal intelligence, and ground sources, analysts traced the origin point to a concealed facility approximately 70 kilometers east of the engagement zone. Within minutes, the coordinates were validated and transmitted through secure tactical data links to an F-16 Fighting Falcon squadron operating in regional airspace. Inside the cockpit, the lead pilot's display updated with the new target data. After confirmation, the formation adjusted course and accelerated toward the designated area. Flying at high speed and altitude beyond the reach of local air defenses, the aircraft maintained strategic advantage. Precision-guided munitions were released, their onboard navigation systems continuously adjusting trajectory as they descended toward the target. The impact was decisive. The launch site was neutralized, leaving only structural remnants behind. What began as a defensive engagement transitioned into a full intelligence-to-action cycle. Detect, respond, analyze, and strike. The operation demonstrated how rapidly integrated data systems can close the loop between defense and response. The attack was fully disrupted. The UAVs were eliminated, the mission was broken, and the launch capability was removed. Inside the command environment, silence followed. Not as confusion, but as resolution. For the operators at Haka, it was simply another operational morning. Beyond the battlefield, the event underscored a broader principle of modern conflict. Speed of information and coordination defines outcomes more than raw firepower alone.